Marty Joseph, and joining me in studio tonight, we have Nick Palma, Dylan Fearon, and Victoria Rutigliano. How's everyone doing tonight?
Great, thanks for having me, Marty.
I'm doing good, Marty. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
All right, well, let's get right into the action, guys. After finally scoring its first goal of the season on September 13th in a 1-0 victory over Vermont, the women's soccer team suffered another setback on the early season with a 2-0 loss to St. Joseph's on Friday. The Bobcats only managed 2 shots on goal in the game and have only scored 1 goal in the first 6 games. To start, guys, will this team's inability to score define the 2014 season? Nick, we'll start with you.
I do believe it will help. It will define the team in the 2014 season. They've struggled to score so far this year, and that trend is leaning towards that once again. And they've only scored 1 goal here this year. It came off the leg of Jessica Fontaine. But if this team, needs to rely on their defense all year, it's not going to pan out as MAC play comes underway. Now, with that 1 goal, it's creating more opportunities and more chances throughout the games, but I really think they need to capitalize more.
They've only had 1 home game all season. They're 0-5 on the road, yes, but we've only seen them play in Hampden once. We've got to give them a chance to see what they can do at home, and as we're going to talk about later in the show, they have 3 of the next 4 games are in Hampden. So we have to give them a chance to see what they can do at home. In their only home game against Vermont, in which they won, we saw some great performances by Sarah Pandolfi. Laura Nicholas was all over the place in the back line, and Natalia Grodzki picked up her 4th career save. Before we define this team in the first 6 games, we have to see how they play at home.
I agree. I'm going to be a little more optimistic than you. I think that it could define them, but that doesn't mean that it will. Obviously, you need to score. You need to shoot to score. They haven't been shooting a lot. They've had like 6 shots a game. Only 2 or 3 of them have even been on net. So I think in MAC play, which is coming up, if they're able to find ways to shoot more on net, then it won't define them. But they have to figure out how to do that.
Now, Nick, you mentioned the defense and the pressure that the lack of goal scoring is putting on the defense. Natalia Grodzki, she's only allowed 6 goals against in the 6 games. She has 19 saves. Is this putting any pressure on her specifically?
Well, it definitely does, because when you have good offense, it makes good defense. And when a team can score a lot of goals, it helps take the pressure off the defense, and with that, the goaltender. So I think if they start scoring more goals, it's going to take the pressure off the defense, and then things are going to start happening.
And Dylan, you mentioned Christina Cesarini. Is she a player that needs to step up as a senior on this team?
Oh, of course. There's not too many seniors on this team. A couple injuries to some seniors are putting them out, including Taylor Healy. In terms of the players that are on the field, Cesarini does have to step up. Pandolfi was great on the wing in the Vermont game, which I was at. She was great in the Yale game on the road, which I was at. They're playing a lot better than we think. Even though they're not scoring, they only have 1 goal. They have been playing well in the last 3 games.
Now, the Bobcats open MAC play on Wednesday when they host Iona at 3 o'clock. Including Wednesday, 3 of Quinnipiac's first 4 games in the MAC will be at home. How pivotal is this opening stretch for the Bobcats, and could it make or break their season? Dylan?
Well, to start off MAC play, it's always going to be pivotal. We've seen in the last couple of years, Quinnipiac has started off conference play very well. Last year, they started the first 4 games undefeated, and the year before, in their last season in the NEC conference, they started their first 3 games undefeated. I have full confidence in that they'll start this season in MAC play quite well. 3 of the first games are at home. Iona, who they got coming up, which we'll talk about later, was 5th in the preseason poll. Quinnipiac 7th. That's going to be a tough game. There's a lot of parity in the MAC this year between the 4th and 7th teams in that preseason poll.
And Dylan, you keep mentioning the home field advantage. Do you really think that playing at home will benefit this team, who has struggled offensively, not even this year, but in last year as well?
Oh, of course, because you've seen in the road games they haven't scored, and you're going against tough teams on the road. You went to California. You went to Pennsylvania to play St. Joseph's, an Atlantic 10 program. At home against Vermont, another strong team. They scored. They won. I really think home field advantage is huge. It was huge last year for them. They did struggle on the road, and we saw in the MAC tournament in Disney they struggled against Manhattan.
I do agree with Dylan. I think, you have to find this team's true identity once they start playing some home games. They got the 1 win against Vermont, so we'll see what goes on now as they play Iona in their first MAC conference game. And, playing home is big. Any team wants to play home. They're comfortable there. They have their fans, their families, and stuff cheering them on. So we'll see what happens.
I agree. I think it's extremely pivotal. So far out of conference, they are 1-5. That's not the best record, but again, it's not the MAC. The MAC is the most important. If they can find these games at home, if they can find ways to win with their whole crowd around them and all their friends and family there, it'll be very important and very helpful for them.
Nick, you mentioned the attendance and the crowds and their families. When Quinnipiac went to California on the road to play UC Davis and U Pacific, There were 600 plus people at both of those games rooting against Quinnipiac. Now they come home to Vermont. They had a huge crowd for the home opener, and it's going to happen this week against Iona and then Canisius as well.
But do you guys really believe that a lack thereof, or for the sake of being at home, do you really think that that's big, that much of an impact on this team that just has not been able to put anything together offensively?
Well, I do think that they still have some offensive struggles that they need to work on. Obviously, the team has probably been practicing to work on getting more opportunities and creating more shots on net. They do have 7.8 shots on goal, as Victoria mentioned it before, but only two or three of those make it on net. So they really need to capitalize on the few opportunities that they get, and if anything, they got to create more.
And obviously, if they're a defensive-minded team, they need to really focus on their transitioning, because that's going to be a big part of the game. If they're focused on their defense and they're looking to their defense, they need to make sure that they're practicing their transitioning, getting the ball up to offense so they can score more goals.
Breakaways are going to be huge, set pieces and corners as well.
All right, well, looking deeper into this stretch of games, I already mentioned Wednesday's game against Iona, but then the Bobcats travel to Niagara on Saturday before hosting Fairfield on October 1st and Canisius on October 4th. Out of these 4 games, which do you guys think is the most important for QU? Victoria,
I think Canisius. As of now, they're on a 7-game losing streak, and the Bobcats being 1-5, as we said before, they really need to gain their confidence back, and they can do that when they play Canisius. And Canisius obviously won't be as confident either. So this is a pivotal game for them. If they can score goals and if they can win, their confidence is going to be boosted. They're going to play better in the MAC.
I have to disagree with you on that one, Victoria. And I'm going to have to go with the Niagara game because this game is on the road, and it's the only game that's on the road out of those 4-game stretches. So it's important that they come to Niagara, who's off to a quick start. They're 4-1-3. They've already played that one MAC game against Manhattan this past weekend, and they tied it 1-1. So Niagara has I think they have a lot of confidence going into this game, and if Quinnipiac wants to get stronger as the season progresses, they're going to need to come away with a big road win against Niagara.
Victoria, I don't get how the Canisius game is more important than all these other games when they have lost 7 in a row, when this should be the easiest game for Quinnipiac during this 4-game stretch. I'm going with Iona. It's the first conference game. You want to get conference play going well. It's the first showdown. You're at home. Got a big crowd coming in midweek. Iona was 5th in the preseason poll, as I mentioned. Quinnipiac was 7th. They're very close. A lot of parity in this conference. It's clearly Iona.
Now, Fairfield does have the bebetter record out of those 4 teams, but I have to agree with what Dylan says. You want to focus on the game at hand. Sure, it's only 2 days away, but it does start conference play. Iona's 5-4. I don't really see how Canisius is that important of a game. As you mentioned, they're 1-9. It's still 4 games away. There's no way that Dave Clark has his team looking that far ahead when they still know they have to take care of what's in front of them right now. So I have to agree with Dylan on that one. I think Iona is definitely the more important game as of right now. But moving down the road, who knows, Fairfield, a 6-2-1 team right now, could be the team to look out for in the MAC. So we're going to take our first break of the evening, but when we come back, we will shift our focus from the women's to the men's soccer team. So be sure to stay with us. You're watching Bobcat Breakdown.
The Bobcat Shop, located at 1010 Sherman Avenue in Hamden. Your #1 choice for Bobcat merchandise. The Bobcat Shop features 2 floors of countless styles and colors. With a full 19,000 square foot screen printing and embroidery operation on the premises, Campus Customs and Simplify can design and decorate any garment or promotional product as quickly as needed. Stop in and say hi.
I could really go for a Ray and Mike sub right now.
Come to Ray and Mike's and try our Philly chicken with cheese for just over $4, giant cheesesteak subs, and mouth-watering boar's head sandwiches for as low as $4.75. Q-Cash accepted just a mile down the road on Whitney, here at Ray and Mike's.
Wake up, Quinnipiac! It's the morning after! Hey! Come on, guys, it's time for TMA! Let's go! What's the morning after? Mondays at 10, only on Q30!
And we have a
Back to his Hollywood.
This is my mom.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. I'm your host, Marty Joseph. The men's soccer team are coming off a 1-1 week after falling on the road to Holy Cross 2-1 last Wednesday, and recently defeating Columbia 2-0 on Saturday afternoon. After starting the season 0-3-1, Quinnipiac has improved to 2-4-1, but they've been unable to string back-to-back wins all season. Why has consistency been such an issue for this team, Victoria?
Recently, I actually do not think the team has been playing inconsistently. They might have lost to Holy Cross earlier in the week, but they totaled 12 shots, 6 of which were on net. They actually took more shots than Holy Cross did. I believe that they played a very good game. They were just unlucky. They also defeated Columbia 2-0, so obviously that's not inconsistent. And then although they tied Army 0-0, they took 11 shots. That's a lot. So I do not believe that they're actually playing inconsistently. I believe lately they've actually been playing very well.
Victoria, once again, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think whenever you look at a team and their consistency, you have to see what they're doing on the offensive end. And this team has kind of struggled to score. They've gotten their goals in bunches. I know they have 6 goals in their 7 games, but all those goals have come in their wins. They got three goals against Providence in their 3-1 win, and then they just got 2 goals against Columbia in the 2-0 win, which is very impressive. But if they want to be consistent, they need to put more goals on the board at a consistent level every game, day in and day out.
This team has been a little inconsistent, but it's not a surprise to me because last year they were also inconsistent in the non-conference games. You're playing tough non-conference games. They went over to Chicago to play Northwestern and Northern Illinois. They played Providence, Boston College, Army. They went to Holy Cross. They're playing some really tough teams. Last year they didn't win back-to-back games until mid-October when they won 4 straight, all of which were conference games. They've been inconsistent, yes, but at the end of the day, I'm not that concerned going into conference play for this team.
So you think it's more important right now to get this sort of offensive jitters out of the way here?
Well, yeah, exactly right, because you're starting, you're giving big-time minutes to a couple of transfers like Tanner Job and James Greco. A couple of freshmen are getting some big-time minutes like Maximilian Rothenbucher, John Diaz. You've got some young sophomores in the midfield. The only senior attacker you have is Michelle Baker, so this kind of time is the time for these young players to gel together as a team.
I like what Dylan's saying right there because if you want to keep putting goals on the scoreboard, it's gonna you're gonna have your identity as a team is gonna come into play once conference play comes around. So with those tough out of conference opponents, it really helps shape who this team really is, and I think they're getting more opportunities and putting more goals on the scoreboard as the season keeps going.
Last year when they went to Yale and they won 1-0, that game propelled them into conference play, and they strung those 4 wins together. Same thing could happen here when they face Yale at home.
Okay, so last season the Bobcats were primarily led on offense by Simon Hind. We just mentioned a bunch of different players as well. However, life after Hind hasn't been too much of an issue as of late. After being shut out in the first 4 games, the Bobcats have responded with 6 goals from 6 different scorers in those 4 games. Does the scoring depth better suit this team, or should they look for 1 or 2 players to produce offensively consistent?
Well, last year they scored 20 goals total, and this year they're only bringing back 5 of those goals, 4 from senior Michelle Baker and 1 from defender Toby Esch. So this year coming in, there's only 1 main goal scorer. The rest are new to the team. You've got transfers, you've got freshmen. I kind of like the fact that there's no real pressure on anyone to produce game in and game out. The fact that there's depth, the fact that someone can have a good night and contribute to the team, and you can also have an attacker that doesn't have a good night, and you're still going to be all right.
I think it all depends on the style of play of the team and the system. And in Coach Eric DeCosta's system, he likes to spread the ball out and give everyone a shot to score. And that's what we're kind of seeing here. You got Tanner Job, who comes off the bench to add some fresh legs to fatiguing players. And then you have the transfer student in James Greco, who's contributed so much for this team in the past few games. He's gotten 2 assists, 1 goal in his past few games. And it's really important to see the contribution from these players that are not used to MAC play and stuff. And we'll see what they do now and how they contribute to the team as MAC play comes underway.
And just going back to Dylan's point there, where he said there really wasn't any added pressure on some of these players. You look at some of these games, the 2-0 loss to Boston College, even you can argue that the 2-1 loss to Holy Cross. Don't you think there should be a player that knows that he needs to step up in those times when they're getting the chance, but they're not coming through?
Oh, it's probably Michelle Baker who feels the most pressure game in and game out. As a senior, as the second leading goal scorer from last year, and you're the only senior attacker on the roster, there's going to be added pressure every single game, and he's definitely feeling it. But in terms of the rest of the attackers, you don't have to rely on one of those guys to contribute game in and game out.
I think anytime you lose your top scoring player, you're going to find some games that you really miss them up, miss that player. But at the same time, I think that it allows room for other players to get more opportunities, and allows for players like Marshall Baker to finally step in and be that main goal scorer. But on the other end, Quinnipiac's going to have to use other tactics to find ways of getting the goal in net.
What are those other tactics?
Well, like I said before, he has the transfer student Tanner Job, who's been coming off the bench and adding fresh legs. He's got the player from England, James Doig, and he's been adding a lot of help from the forward attack. But on terms of, I think Marshall Baker really needs to step up because, like Dylan said, he's that guy this year as a senior, and we need to see more production out of him.
But at the same time, this isn't a one-person sport. This is a team effort. So I don't really think that there's one specific player that you need to say, listen, he's a senior, he should be the one scoring all the goals. No, I don't think that's it.
That's not what I said. I didn't say he had to score all the goals. I just said there's a little more pressure on him to contribute more to the team. Just like in any other sport, the older guys are going to feel the pressure to contribute because you've been there for years, because you've got surrounding players around you that are young and haven't played together as a unit. I didn't say that he needs to score all the goals. I just said he needs to contribute more than some of the other players on the team.
Then again, there are some really, really good freshmen on the team. There are good underclassmen. I don't think it should just be him that you're saying this is a player that when they need it, he should score.
But you have a lot of players in the starting lineup and on the team that haven't played on this team before. So coming in, there is going to be added pressure on Michelle Baker because other players haven't played together and haven't been on the team itself. Yes, they're talented.
I think both of you are bringing up two pretty good points. Obviously, from Dylan's standpoint, you definitely don't. I think he's saying where you want. Obviously, there's going to be pressure on the leaders, the senior leaders, but you don't want to have too much pressure on them. And from Victoria's standpoint, you want more depth in your scoring because it is a team sport. Similar to the women's team, though, 3 of the next 4 games for the men's team come at the QU soccer field as they host Yale, Niagara, and Ryder, as well as traveling to Canisius. Posing a similar question for this, how pivotal is this upcoming stretch for the men?
I actually spoke to Coach Eric DaCosta this weekend, and I asked him what we should expect from the team as MAC play gets underway. And what he said is he expects the team to play good soccer. And I know that's a broad statement, is playing good soccer, but what he meant by that is spreading the ball out, playing consistent on defense, and helping out the goaltender. And I really think that once this offense comes around, you're going to see a strong team in MAC play.
I agree. I think the men's story is very similar to the women's. Both teams haven't won a lot of games so far in the non-conference play, but now that the MAC season is here, this is really when they need to step it up. This is really when they need to start scoring goals, connecting, getting the ball up the field, because they're the most important games.
Well, I think it's really pivotal because we saw last year on the road against Yale when they won, that propelled them into MAC play, and they didn't lose for nearly a month. And including in that month stretch, they played Canisius, they played Niagara, and they played Yale, who they're playing in this stretch. So it's extremely pivotal for them to end the non-conference season well and head into MAC play.
So just real quick, do you think that this stretch is more important for the men's or the women's?
Oh, clearly the women's. They really need this. They've only had one home game all season. We see the men's team play a couple of times. And the men's team have just been playing better overall. I think it's more pivotal for the women's team at 1-5 to head into MAC play really, really strong.
Nick and Victoria?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Dylan, because the women's soccer team is still trying to find their identity. They're still trying to find out who they are and create more opportunities. Whereas the men's, they've been playing more consistent. They play tough teams and they show what they could do. I think as MAC play comes our way, you're going to see a good soccer team for the men's.
While I agree with that, I feel like the men's team also has more potential. So this is very pivotal for them too, because I feel like they have more potential to make it into the conference finals and make it high in that. So I think it is very important for the women, but it's also it's very pivotal for them.
Okay, well, we're going to take our final break of the evening, but when we get back, we're going to dive into our discussion on the women's hockey team as the Bobcats open their preseason schedule with an 8-0 win over the Chinese national team over the weekend. We'll also talk about the ECAC preseason coaches poll, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Bobcat Shop, located at 1010 Sherman Avenue in Hamden. Your #1 choice for Bobcat merchandise. The Bobcat Shop features 2 floors of countless styles and colors. With a full 19,000 square foot screen printing and embroidery operation on the premises, Campus Customs and Simplify can design and decorate any garment or promotional product as quickly as needed. Stop in and say hi.
I could really go for a Ray and Mike sub right now.
Come to Ray and Mike's and try our Philly chicken with cheese for just over $4, giant cheesesteak subs, and mouth-watering boar's head sandwiches for as low as $4.75. Cash accepted just a mile down the road on Whitney here at Ray and Mike's.
Wake up, Quinnipiac! It's the morning after! Hey! Come on, guys, it's time for TMA! Let's go! What's the morning after? Mondays at 10, only on Q30!
And we have a
Back to his Hollywood days.
This is my mom.
Making a sit here and back. For the potential playoff spot, which Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. After a historic 2013-14 season with a program best 22-6-9 record, the women's ice hockey team narrowly missed out on an at-large bid in what would have been the team's first NCAA tournament appearance. Last Tuesday, the ECAC League office announced the preseason coaches poll. Harvard topped the poll with 119 points and 9 first-place votes. Cornell and defending national champion Clarkson received 108 and 101 points, respectively, for second and third place. Quinnipiac rounded out the top 4 with 94 points. So to start our discussion, what are everyone's thoughts on the poll? Dylan, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's pretty fair. Harvard's a national powerhouse. They're bringing back a lot of their players. In terms of Quinnipiac, fourth it seems kind of fair to me, but I think what the polls don't show is how good Quinnipiac's freshmen are. They're bringing in a really good class. Yes, they're losing Babstock, but Cheyenne D'Arcangelo is going to be on the team for her second year. You're bringing back Erica Uden-Johansson. Nicole Casas no longer redshirting. She's going to be back for her senior year. So I think the polls don't really show everything. This team could definitely compete for the 2 or 3 spot in the ECAC for sure.
In my opinion, guys, I feel that any of those top 4 teams really could have been ranked in any of those spots. What it tells us about the Quinnipiac team this year is that, those are going to be the teams that they have to get through in order to finally reach that NCAA tournament. And what's important for them is, like Dylan said, the returning class of players that they do have. Cheyenne D'Arcangelo had an astonishing year transferring here to Quinnipiac last year. And I think that Emma Woods is poised for another good year after a really good freshman season.
I agree with that. I feel like obviously all the teams that were chosen for a reason. They're all very, very good. Harvard, obviously, as I'm going to talk about later, is a team definitely to look out for. They're very strong this year. They only lost 2 players last year to graduation. As for Quinnipiac being in 4th, I agree. I think that that's really where they should be. They did lose, as Dylan said before, Babstock, who was the points leader on the team, was second in goals. So that's going to be kind of something they need to find a new player to take her spot. But overall, I think 4th place was pretty much where they should be.
I won't go as far as what Nick said about the top 4 teams could be ranked in either of those spots. I don't think Harvard would be 4th in the ECAC, but I'll agree with him that it's fair.
Okay. I was just saying, I thought that any of those teams really could make a push for the first place this year, especially when the tournament comes.
Now, there's really no question that the Crimson are bringing a lot back. They could be the odds-on favorite to win the conference, but you guys didn't mention the ECAC champion Big Red or the national champion Golden Knights. What about them two?
I really think that Cornell is poised to have a good year. I know that Harvard has a lot of returning players, but Cornell is returning 6 of their top 6 players from last season, and that's all led by seniors Jillian Saulnier and Brianne Jenner. And I think with those 2 seniors and those 2 leaders, it's going to really help Cornell try to reclaim the throne in the ECAC playoff tournament.
As for Clarkson, I feel like they're going to have a lot more trouble this year than they did last year. They lost 7 players to graduation, including Jamie Lee Rattray, who was the top scorer in all of the NCAA. So they're going to have to find someone to take her position because obviously she was a go-to player. She was right there. She was the player that they looked to game in and game out. So I think Colgate's going to have a little bit more trouble this season.
It wasn't in terms of disrespecting Cornell or Clarkson. It was just my high regard for both Harvard and Quinnipiac. I think Quinnipiac is going to be in the top 2 of the ECAC, and Harvard, as Victoria mentioned, only lost 2 seniors to graduation. I think Harvard is going to be a national powerhouse this year for sure.
Now, over the last couple of seasons, from a Quinnipiac standpoint at least, you've seen that Quinnipiac can skate with Clarkson at times. They've been able to beat Cornell. And the only team that's really been be able to give them trouble is Harvard. So is there any of those 4 teams, can any of those 3 teams pose a threat to Harvard?
Well, I think Quinnipiac has a chance because their top 3 lines this year are going to be very, very strong. Think about the freshman class they brought in. Dylan Fearon is a very, very good player, one of the best high schoolers in the country last year. They could possibly drop Cheyenne Darkangelo to the second line, which is what they did in the Chinese national team game in which they won 8-0. Emma Woods, who had a great start to her freshman campaign, could possibly even be on the third line. So there's a lot of depth on this team, as we're going to talk about later. I think they could definitely pose a threat to the Crimson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to agree with Dylan. Quinnipiac can pose a threat to Harvard, early on in the season and as the season plays out. They have a lot of, returning players. They have the 3 strong lines, but also helps them is Chelsea Layden and net. She had a great year last year with a .928 save percentage. I know that's, a tough mark to reach once again, but with good defense and good goal scoring, I think it'll help get her to where she was a year ago.
I agree. Last season, Quinnipiac had 98 goals. So obviously, their goal scoring ability is going to really play a part in their playing Harvard, because Harvard is going to be, as we said, very, very good this year. So if they can continue to score like they did last year, I think they can play with them and keep up with them.
Now at the winter preseason, the winter sports press conference on Thursday, Coach Rick Seeley praised his team this season, and here's what he said.
We're pretty excited about the season. I think it's far and away the best combination of talent, experience, and depth we've ever had. So I think everyone's pretty excited. The returning players have basically picked up where they left off last year in terms of understanding what's expected, and we're pretty content in knowing that the freshmen will follow along pretty quickly.
So fast forwarding from Thursday to Saturday, the Bobcats opened their brief exhibition schedule over the weekend with an 8-0 win over the Chinese national team at High Point Solutions Arena. Nicole Connery's 2 goals led a cast of 7 different scorers, and defensively the Bobcats held China to just 7 shots. Obviously, you cannot expect this type of dominance every game, but in terms of scoring and defensive depth, is this what the type of play that you should expect from this team game in and game out?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, you mentioned Nicole Connery right there before, and personally, I think she's one of the better skaters on the ice for the Quinnipiac Bobcats, so look for her to have a big year in her junior campaign. Also, we mentioned Cheyenne Darkangelo and Emma Woods, who were both double-digit scorers last year. They're returning Nicole Costu, I think everyone has forgot about after she medically redshirted last year. She led the team in assists with 28 of those, plus 39 points added on with 11 goals. So look for her to get back into her 2012-13 form.
I agree with that. 6 out of the 8 goals were scored by different players. So obviously there's depth there. There's a lot of different players who can come out and who can score. As Dylan said, they have a really good recruiting class. Taylor Cianfrano, was on the U.S. under 18 team. So she's going to be a forward who's a force to be reckoned with. She's going to be scoring a lot of goals for this team. You saw her before in the game against China, and you're going to see her a lot this season. So I think they do have a lot of depth offensively.
Well, of course not that they're going to. Of course, they're not going to win 8-0 every time out. But the depth is certainly there. You have 3 really tough lines, and the third line's job really is to not allow goals against. You've got a potential third line with Emma Woods. Could have Megan Turner in there somewhere. They have really tough forwards. The list goes on with 7, 8 really strong forwards. The defense is really good, anchored by Emma Greco and Sid Rusler. This team has a lot of potential, and it's going to be a very exciting 2014-15 campaign.
Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Bobcat Breakdown. For Nick Palma, Dylan Fearon, Victoria Rutigliano, I'm Marty Joseph. Thank you for watching Bobcat Breakdown.